downtime here to start the week before the first-place Texas Rangers come into Camden Yards and fill our hot summer nights with pennant race baseball and playoff fever and all that good stuff. Meanwhile, they're on the back fields out in Owings Mills. They got the tents set up, the VIPs, the PSL winners, the kids lining up for autographs, and, of course, our Luke Jones on the scene doing double duty with the Ravens in Owings Mills as training camp is officially underway. And, Luke, we know and recognize this because everything is over-observed, right?
Oh, no doubt about it. Everyone asking, how so-and-so look, who's the early stars of camp. Chris Moore has stood out the first couple of days, the rookie wide receiver. Tavon Young, rookie cornerback, has looked pretty good early on, but it's a few days of training camp. And we've all seen so many different guys excel this time of year, so many different guys look like they're going to be the next big thing, and then they get to that first preseason game and they don't fare well, or they just disappear. That's not the knock on those guys.
We can go through all the names. It's fun, isn't it? Because you only remember their names because of training camp, right? And because of preseason football games.
I think back to guys like Justin Harper. I think back to Nate Bowling. So many different guys you
How
can think of.
How about the running back, Bobby
Rainey?
Who there you go. Thank you.
To his credit, has had a decent run in the NFL the last few years with Tampa Bay specifically. But, it's so magnified, and I think it's a little more magnified this year with the team coming off of a 5-11 season and having so many injuries and having, the kind of roster turnover that they've had really the last couple of years with some of the veterans that departed via free agency last year and, some of the young guys that they were expecting to step forward last year that it didn't exactly happen because of guys just not stepping forward or guys getting hurt. So, you do have a few more question marks, and you do have a little more anticipation this time of year. And I think, quite frankly, John Harbaugh and his staff are probably have a little more urgency this time of year than, say, the last few years. And that's not to say you get complacent, but I think a 5-11 season opens everyone's eyes to say, hey, that wasn't good enough. That was not nearly what we expect around here. And I think the start of camp, and we heard about this in the spring with the workout program and everything, it's been a little more rigorous. It's been a little more demanding physically than it has been the last few years. And you know what? That might not be a bad thing.
Well, in the headlines this time of year, there's a headline a day or several every day, and it's been kind of an eventful first couple of days just for stuff happening, whether it was Jake Long is in, he's not in, he might be in, then he's not in at all. Obviously the Wallace conditioning test was kind of something over the weekend, and then Justin Tucker kicking 69-yard field goals.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Jake Long. It kind of reminds you of the Orioles' physical process. But the Ravens, they knew that this was a possibility, and it was a case with him. They didn't feel great about how his knee looked during the physical process, and they wanted him to sign an injury waiver. He wasn't willing to do that, and that's his prerogative as well. But it is funny, though. This information gets out publicly, and you wonder if another team's going to sign him. The Mike Wallace thing, no big deal. It's a storyline that, hey, it's not a great look for the first day of camp, certainly, but it's one of those things you forget about very quickly. He was back on the practice field over the weekend. In fact, Sunday, he had an early drop, but then made some really nice plays, and he was very active in the offense. So I don't think there's any concern there. But, this time of year, we talk about this all the time, whether we're talking about the WNST.net text service and having to send out someone being carted off, someone being gone for the year with a serious injury. Those are the kind of things you hold your breath about more than anything else. The Ravens have had some nagging injuries early on. Kenneth Dixon sprained MCL that is keeping him out for a little while here, but not supposed to be anything serious. Chris Moore tweaked something. John Harbaugh is already in, I don't want to say mid-season form because he might not address it at all, but He's made it clear he's not going to speculate how long someone's out. He's not going to go into detail.
Well, he can always look back at the Perryman thing from last year and say, look, man, you guys, I'm trying to be as honest as I can be, and things take a turn for the worse. I mean, that's injuries, right? I mean, all the way along. Having dealt with my wife's cancer situation, everything's day to day, right? And with these guys being injured, he doesn't want to be wrong to some degree. And I don't even know if you really can be accurate or as accurate as you'd want to be, even if you tried.
I hear them, but at the same time, I'm not sure a decreased amount of transparency is the solution there either. I'm fine with if you say, guy's dealing with a little bit of a hamstring, not sure how long it's going to be, but we don't think it's going to be a season-ending or a real long-term thing. And then leave it at that. You don't have to tell me he's going to miss the next 5 practices because I know that no injury is going to be that specific. But at the same time, it's a little bit of a cop-out probably. But, what we do know is the injuries that they've had early on in camp, Crockett Gilmore, a hamstring. Timmy Jernigan had a little bit of a rib cage issue on Saturday and missed Sunday's practice. These aren't supposed to be things that are going to keep these guys out to the point where you're talking about them and being in danger of missing the whole preseason or anything like that. So, it's good to see. But, the Perriman thing, I hear what he's saying at the same time. It kind of gives them a convenient excuse to not talk about injuries at all. But we'll keep asking. And
everything's just so speculative, I guess.
And in fairness to John here, it's like this just about everywhere in the NFL. I mean, the amount of paranoia, and they're paranoid. And if John doesn't like me saying that, head coaches are paranoid. They are.
Truth.
You see it everywhere. So I don't want to make it sound like singling him out and criticizing him individually too much.
All right, Luke Jones out on the backfields in Owings Mills, and, of course, following the Orioles this week as well. Any news will come to you first on the WNST Tech Service. That's brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Pitta has been newsworthy in that he hasn't been newsworthy to some degree, but apparently running around and looking a lot like the old number 88, right?
Yeah, he seems to be moving well. Now, it's real. In all honesty, it's difficult to gauge where is he physically talking, how fast is he, how explosive, how agile, all of that, because we haven't seen him play on a regular basis in 4 years now. 2013, only played in 4 games, only played in 3 games in 2014, didn't play at all last year other than just the PUP window where he practiced, but media wasn't really able to see much of that. So it's tough to really compare and say, okay, he's 95% of what he was 4 years ago. Let's keep in mind, Dennis Pitta was never a guy with blinding speed. He just had an ability, ran good routes, and could find the windows in zone coverage.
And also a special relationship with the quarterback as well, right?
But what's been nice, he looks pretty smooth running around. On Saturday, he got popped really good by Zach Orr on, it was just the play where he released from the line of scrimmage and Flacco threw a short pass. Orr lit him up pretty good. And he got right back up, and it was without incident. And I thought the interesting thing was he talked to the media on Friday, which was their last practice before they put the full pads on, and he kept getting all these questions from us reporters. Understandable, because that's the story, but asking about you being in full pads and doing full contact, is that another step for you? How's the hip feeling? How much of an adjustment is it? How different does it feel? Are you feeling the hip while you're playing? And he made a comment that I thought was interesting, and he said, look, I don't think about the hip really at this point until you guys bring it up when I'm standing here. And do I think he's being 100% honest there? Probably not. But at the same time, let's think back, especially the second injury. That occurred on a non-contact, innocuous, short pass from Joe Flacco where he turned upfield and the hip gave out.
It was ordinary. I mean,
right.
Completely ordinary.
I think if you're Dennis Pitta, and look, none of us know how this is going to go, including him. We know that most likely this guy's going to need a hip replacement at some point down the line. You hope long from the time that his football career is over, and you hope and pray, I think everyone, including media, is rooting for Dennis Pitta to, more than anything else, not to be back in a position that he was in Cleveland 2 years ago. I mean, no one wants to see that. How effective he's going to be as a player if he gets on the field and plays, that's just gravy. And even the Ravens, they don't need Dennis Pitta to be what he was 4 years ago. If he's not going to play, they have plenty of other tight ends that can be productive for them. But I think for him, his mindset, if he's going to be successful with this comeback, is he can't think about it. He can't. Buck Showalter likes to use the expression, we can't live in that world, when always thinking about hypotheticals and what if and what do you expect's going to happen. Dennis Pitta's, there's just as much unknown for him as anyone else. He says he feels a lot better now than he did last year at this time when was still trying to kind of go through the process of figuring out if he was going to play. He said last October into November, when he had the 3-week window to practice, that he felt okay, but the hip still didn't feel all that great. He says he feels great. He's not feeling it anymore. All we can do is trust him at his word, and that's kind of where the Ravens are at this point too. But I just think I think he is being honest and saying, look, I can't really think about this. If I'm going to be out here playing, I don't feel it. I'm not thinking about it. And I asked him, quite frankly, and he actually responded. It was kind of amusing. He said, that's a really good question compared to just talking about the hip. I asked him, how do you feel about all the competition here? I mean, this team has Ben Watson. This team has Crockett Gilmore, who certainly has shown signs of being a really good tight end if he can stay healthy, which he's banged up again right now, which is disappointing for him. This team has Max Williams. This team even has guys like Nick Boyle and Darren Waller, who have been knuckleheads getting suspended, but they show promise as players. So this team has lots of other talent, and as I've said to you, Dennis Pitta has to prove that he still can be a productive player. It's one thing to be healthy, but if he can't move around like he used to, that's not going to be of any use to the Ravens. So the good thing is, knock on wood,
or whatever your choice of good luck is, right?
Right, that he stayed healthy to this point, and he is moving around pretty well. And as far as the chemistry with Joe Flacco, as you mentioned, he kind of said that's like riding a bike. He knows what Joe's thinking. Joe knows what he's thinking. So, hey, we're all rooting for it. But first and foremost, no one wants to see him back in a position from a health standpoint like he's been twice over the last 4 seasons. You just hope he stays healthy, and whatever he can provide, be gravy. It'd be awesome to see him back on the field playing. Certainly, he's someone who has been a really important part of this offense in the past, but the Ravens are in a good position because they're not desperate for him to have to be playing, but at the same time, if he can play and if he can stay healthy, then great. It's another piece to throw into this offense that, we all agree there's plenty of upside, there's intrigue, but certainly they're looking for playmakers. Dennis Pitt is a guy who has shown in the past he can be that.
Luke, I know you know life in Westminster versus life in Owings Mills, and I know some fans still, have their issue with it. I sort of get it the further we get into it. This is the week, however, they do practice downtown. That's kind of a cool thing. If you want to go see them run around, you don't have to drive to Westminster. You just drive downtown, go to the stadium. It's open. It's free to the public. There's fireworks. It's kids. We swabbed last year. Obviously, there's a military night coming up tonight as well. This is a very, very active week, and people are sort of looking to some of the young players. And I know Correa has moved very, very quickly to the head of the class. And we can talk about all the other depth guys and how the Dixons look or don't look and those guys. But Correa is probably going to be a guy who's a very, very heavy part of their starting package and looks to be a guy who might be on the field 60 to 80% of the time this year.
It's sure looking that way. And we saw this first in the spring where he was working out some at inside linebacker. I mean, this was an edge defender in college at Boise State. So, a little surprising back in the spring to see him working at the weak side inside linebacker spot next to Mosley, who has moved over to the Mike linebacker spot, which is Darryl Smith's old position. But, in the spring you're always thinking, okay, how much of this is experimentation and how much of this is legitimate? We've seen plenty of guys move around in the spring, and then come late July and August, they're kind of playing their conventional position. But Correa has been the guy at inside linebacker. Now, what they've been doing, he's been playing inside linebacker next to Mosley in the base defense, and then they've been moving him to the outside in the nickel, and then Zach Orr comes in. And we saw Zach Orr replace Darryl Smith on passing downs late last year as it went on. And
they have high hopes for him, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's someone that I think they hope can be a factor in their nickel package at the very least. But it's looking very much like they're looking at Kamalei Correa to be their, to be a starting inside linebacker for them, which, I think losing Darryl Smith, which I think everyone agreed he was losing. He had lost a step, maybe two, compared to where he was a couple years before that. But that's still a guy who led this team in tackles, and still a guy who was still a productive player, and I think still will be this year with Tampa Bay. But it was clear they wanted to get younger, they wanted to get a little faster, and Correa has looked good. Now it's still very early, but it was nice to see on Saturday, even dropping into coverage. A seam pass that Joe Flacco threw. Correa tipped it up in the air with one arm and made an interception. So nice to see him do that. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they use him, because they are moving him to the outside in the nickel. Keep in mind, Suggs and Dumerville not practicing right now, so anything you see in their sub packages or at outside linebacker, you take with a major grain of salt. But it appeared the way they're looking him kind of reminded me a little bit of how the Ravens used Bart Scott when he was in Baltimore. Inside linebacker, but they would move him outside, get after the quarterback from time to time, and kind of use him as a versatile player. He's a guy who, if you remember, was a safety once upon a time in his football career. So, Correa, he's certainly big enough to play inside. I mean, he's listed at 6'3", 250 pounds. So size isn't an issue for him playing inside linebacker. It's just a matter of the skill set, and certainly can he drop into coverage. And, to this point, you've seen some very good things from him. And I think based on what we've seen over the first 4 or 5 days of practice, which, remind everyone, is only the first 4 or 5 days of practice, he looks like the favorite to start there. And certainly of all their rookies, Ronnie Stanley's been holding it down at left tackle, and it's only been a couple days of padded practices, so we'll see how that plays out. But Correa's looking, as you said, looks like a guy who is going to be on the field quite a bit. And let's face it, a team that needs to get younger, a team that's looking for more high-impact players on both sides of the ball, your second-round pick, that's going to be something, and that's going to be an encouraging development if he proves to be good enough to get on the field, and two, be able to make an impact as a rookie.
Luke Jones joining us here. He will be on the backfields in Owings Mills all week. Double duty as well with the Orioles and the Texas Rangers battling for first place here. It is a wild first week of August 2016. And changes for the Ravens this year. Obviously, a lot of veteran guys coming back from injuries. Some of them not even on the field. You mentioned Dumerville and Suggs and Smith. Flacco is out there slinging it around right now. But Eric Weddle has become a presence out there. And look, I talked to Brian Billick about this. I also talked to Sarah Ellison about it earlier from BaltimoreRavens.com. And seeing people come into that building, it really is a real tribute to the organization, the franchise, that guys come from other places, and veteran guys who had big impacts in other places, which is why you want Matt Burke. That's why you wanted Rod Woodson and Shannon Sharp and Trevor Price and any number of other guys that they've imported from other organizations. But Eric Weddle looks to be the latest to just sort of put his helmet down, make himself at home, know he's wanted, know he feels comfortable. It looks like he belongs.
Yeah, it looks like a good fit. And ultimately, he's got to be able to play on the field and continue to play at a high level like he did for so many years in San Diego, because, leadership only goes so far if you're a guy who isn't really doing a whole lot to contribute on the field from a production standpoint. But, it was interesting. I asked Dean Pease about Eric Weddle as a leader on the defense. One thing that so many people have talked about since Super Bowl 47 is what? Oh, the Ravens need more leadership. They lost Ray Lewis. They lost Ed Reed. You mentioned Matt Burke and Quan Bolden. Go down the list, guys who were leaders on this team. And look, that's not to say that they haven't had any leaders on this football team, but have they been lacking leadership in certain areas? Certainly in the secondary. I think everyone would agree it's kind of been a captainless ship in the secondary since Ed Reed left. So with Eric Weddle, I asked Dean Pease about his impact, and he brought up a name that, when he was an assistant in New England, who came over there, and a veteran player, very much accomplished, and in this case was a Hall of Fame player. We'll see where Eric Weddle winds up as far as his legacy. Probably not a Hall of Famer by any means, but a guy who's been a really accomplished player. He compared him to Junior Seau, who was a guy who went into New England at a time when it looked like his career was just about over, and it was kind of revitalized a little bit. Maybe wasn't the guy he was 5 or 6 years before that in San Diego when he was one of the best 2 or 3 defensive players in the game, but was able to provide some leadership. And the thing that he said that's really similar with what Seyal did in New England to what Weddle has done, at least early on, is he's come in and he's been a leader in a very natural way. It hasn't been a case of, hey, we did all these things in San Diego, I made 3 Pro Bowls, look at me, I'm a leader. He's just come in a very natural way. He's been able to fit in, and he's been able to come in and mesh with the other veterans in that locker room on both sides of the ball, and it hasn't been something that's forced. It's just been, this is a guy who's come in, the track record, he has an impressive resume in San Diego all those years, and then he just comes in, and he fits right in, and immediately other players are gravitating to him. And I think in the case of him, when you have Ladarius Webb moving over from corner to safety, and let's remember, this team has some other young safeties like Terrence Brooks and like Matt Elam, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying those guys are assured of even roster spots at this point. They have a lot to prove, but they're guys that they've clearly tried to develop over the last couple of years. You wonder if Eric Weddle could have a positive influence on a guy like Terrence Brooks, who they're still hoping can eventually develop into a starting caliber safety, even though it hasn't happened his first couple seasons. So, just across the board on so many levels, the play on the field, you're going to need that. That much is obvious. But another leader on that defense, an accomplished player, and to hold that secondary to a higher standard, we've seen it the last couple of years. That secondary has been a mess at times. And even at its best, it's just been okay pretty much.
And banged up.
Largely
banged
sure.
up.
I mean, like anything you can think of that could go wrong for the secondary pretty much has since Super Bowl 47. I mean, guys that they brought in to be starting players that haven't worked out. You think of the Michael Huffs. Go through the list. I mean, it's been a lot of wrong. It's been a lot of just, Will Hill looked good for about a season, and then that fell apart, and he gets suspended and released. And
but they're trying, man. I mean,
you just hope that Weddle can just stabilize things back there, calm things down back there, and really help them, one, with the play, two, just his presence from a mental standpoint, and keep everyone organized and on the same page back there. And to this very early stage, it's looking like they're getting exactly what they hoped they would get.
Luke Jones will be on the backfields in Owings Mills. I was out on Saturday, and, of course, the Ravens will be downtown on Monday and on Saturday as well. So plenty of opportunities to go out, take the kids, get the autographs, say hello. And, my favorite expression that Joe Flacco uses is sling it. I came out there on Saturday for a little while, and I look up, and there's big number 5, and he's slinging it. And for a moment, it's almost like there's nothing unusual about seeing Joe Flacco out there in the fields. It's not like he missed 3 years or a whole season. The season was kind of over when he got hurt anyway. The knee brace is the first thing that sort of pops out, but also what pops out is it looks like he was never hurt. He's just throwing the ball really well.
The only 2 things that stand out with Joe Flacco, you mentioned the knee brace, and the Ravens brought back the red non-contact jersey for him. The other quarterbacks wear black jerseys. They started doing this a couple years ago because they saw the 49ers quarterbacks had black jerseys, and I think the Ravens and John Harbaugh thought, hey, that looks pretty cool. So Flacco's wearing a red jersey, and he's got the knee brace. In all honesty, the only thing that over the first 4 or 5 days of practice, the only time where I've seen him abstain from something was the quarterbacks doing a fumble drill on, I think it was Friday. It basically, you could kind of call it the Cam Newton drill, to put it in context for people who saw the Super Bowl and the fumble that he didn't fall on. Joe Flacco abstained from doing that compared to the other quarterbacks, which I think is pretty smart in late July. Joe Flacco knows how to fall on a fumble. So, but beyond that, I haven't seen him. There was some talk about Ryan Mallett sharing reps with him. I don't recall, and I could be wrong about this. Maybe at a point when I went inside to tweet out some updates or anything like that. But I don't recall Ryan Mallett getting reps with the quote unquote starting offense. They've been moving a lot of guys around anyway here and there. They've had some guys in and out of practice. But you're right. You watch him, you don't really get any sense that this is a guy who is 8 months removed from ACL reconstruction surgery, and that's a credit to the hard work he put in. That's a credit to the training staff, and it's just a credit to modern medicine, I suppose. An injury like that, 25 years ago, you're wondering about whether a guy's going to play, how effective he can play after that, and now it's I don't want to say par for the course because that diminishes.
Dude, I remember when we would
in.
say he's the $6 million, like the $6 million man. He makes a lot more than $6 million, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, in my childhood, it would have been he's bionic. They can put him back together again. He's a $100 million man at this point. So I'm sure modern medicine and the best science have all been involved. But it really is kind of I was expecting less than what I got on Saturday, right? He was above the bar for me, right?
Yeah. One thing, and this just just as I'm thinking about it now, I'll say this, and it's funny because I was actually talking to Jeff Zrebeck about this during practice on Sunday. The Ravens have had some issues with some snaps, and it hasn't just been Joe Flacco, in fairness to him, so I'm not putting this on him, but you do wonder, maybe that's one thing that he doesn't have down pat. Just being under center, getting out from underneath center, maybe that's one thing, or maybe he's just trying to jump the gun a little bit, and it's not even something that he may consciously be doing. And I could be completely wrong about this. That could be just something that you'll see at the beginning of camp because you're going to have some rust all the way around. But that's one thing that's come to mind. Yeah, they've had a few issues with snaps, but like I said, it's even been Mallet. It's been more than one center. So maybe it's a communication thing, but maybe that's the one thing that I've seen where I say, okay, maybe that's something that's just a little lingering effect from a psychological standpoint, being in the pocket, wanting to get out up from under center, get out of harm's way as far as getting stepped on. Maybe that's one thing that I've observed over the first few days, but even that, I'm talking about a very minor, nitpicky kind of thing, and I have no idea whether the knee has anything to do with that, or maybe it's just a quarterback center growing pains that you might have at the beginning of training camp, as I've definitely seen from different quarterback center combinations over the years.
All right, you can reach Luke at WNST.net. He's also Baltimore. Luke, as the Orioles make their way down to Camden Yards, he'll also be there. I'm doing double duty and lots of radio this week. You can always reach me, Nasty, at WNST.net, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and, of course, in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Simply download the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear. It's all brought to you by BuyAToyota.com. Our morning newspaper hits your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, and there's one right around the corner from you. Reminder, next Tuesday night, we will be with head coach Brian Billick, our partner here at WNST.net on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. We'll be at Greenmount Station in Hampstead, Carroll County with the coach, kicking off the season, having crab cakes, talking football, and I've already told the coach we're going to talk a lot about Denny Green because I want to hear the mentorship, and I want to hear all about that from the coach. So Brian Billick with us, Greenmount Station for crab cakes next Tuesday night, the 9th of August in Carroll County. Last but never least, breaking news, trading deadlines, Ravens on the backfields, anything big and bold that happens comes to you first on the WNST text service for breaking news only. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis will be here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5. And he's enamored with training camp, much like all of the rest of us are as well. Hope to see some folks down at the practices on Monday and Saturday. You can tweet at us or throw us a note. We'll stop by and say hello. We are not swabbing this week, just getting better with my wife, but do appreciate the Ravens last year making that effort to allow us to swab. We'll be swabbing at Greenmount Station next Tuesday with Brian Billick. We'll be doing some more swabbing down the line, and we'll have more information on that, and on There Goes My Hero as well. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.